Here's a fun little story. This is my retelling of the Tarot's Major Arcane. It's called The Fool's Journey. A young boy leaves an orphanage that had sheltered him for some time and sets out into the medieval world. He has everything he owns in a sack he carries over his shoulder. He's accompanied by his little dog. Why did he take off like that? He wanted to see what the great big world was all about. He was a seeker, but he was naive. The first thing he did was walk right off a cliff. He fell a long way, but being a strong and flexible little boy, he didn't get hurt much. He dusted himself off, and his little doggie ran into him and found him, and off they went again. Shortly, the boy, let's call him Lamont, came upon a little house. In need of some food, he knocked on the door. A rather strange old man in a flowing cape invited him in. The boy knew intuitively that he was in a safe place, and he stayed for a time, as the man taught him how to use his willpower to create the things the boy would need on his journey. The old man gave him some odd artifacts: a chalice, a stick to make fire, a blade, and an odd disc, then sent him on his way with directions to the place of one of his old friends. Lamont walked with a happy step to the house of the old man's friend. As he arrived, he saw a dark and mysterious woman sitting between the pillars of an ancient structure. She wasn't like the old man at all. She moved like a cloud. She spoke in riddles. She seemed to be from another realm. Lamont felt unsettled by her. He knew he was not ready for her lessons. As he slept that night, she appeared in his dream, and she showed him the path to psychic power. But in the morning, she, with great love and concern for his well-being, sent him on his way and told him to go see this person. As Lamont came to the next house, he was met by a lovely lady who he immediately recognized as his Earth Mother. She showed the boy a mother's love. Lamont felt his own sensuality, and that too unnerved him. But the woman was generous and loving and kind. She awakened in him a passion and desire Lamont had never before experienced. While he was poking around in the workshop behind her house, a strong and rather severe man strode in, reeking of authority. He sized the boy up and set him to work pitching hay. And as they worked together, the man taught the boy how to behave within society, how to be rational, how to be stable, how to man up. The man exuded father energy to Lamont, and when the man said Lamont needed to go to school, the boy couldn't say no. Thus he went off to the university, where he was guided into the priesthood and into a secret society. He was shown the accepted way. He learned about how to use religion and politics to control the masses. He was at the university for a long time, and he was fascinated by what he was learning. But he was a seeker, and he was getting restless. One afternoon at the local market, he met a girl. She was beautiful and radiant and soft. Lamont saw in her everything he would ever need to make it in this world. They fell madly in love. He learned about sex and selfless devotion and how to be a partner. And she too was restless. So they decided it was time to move on. Lamont used the magical powers the old man had taught him to summon a chariot. And then, with masterful control of the vehicle and of the two magnificent creatures pulling it forward, Lamont spirited them away to a brand new place. For the first time in his life, Lamont felt like the king of his own domain. Being smart people, Lamont and the girl both knew that they needed to muster the strength and will and courage that lived deep inside them if they were to be successful in this great big world. So they turned inward, and there they found a reservoir of tenacity and courage they did not know they had. They decided to hole up in a small mountain cabin to do the inner work they both knew they needed to do. They stayed there for a long time, in the woods, by themselves, rejecting society. They came to know themselves as never before. But eventually, it was time for them to go back out into the world. And they weren't quite ready for what awaited them. They had not foreseen that life is often random, that no one is in complete control of their destiny. And one random event led to another, and in time the girl left. Lamont, who was now a young man, was broken. How could he go on by himself? He began to remember the knowledge he'd picked up in the early part of his journey, and he began to put it together with his skills into a great force. He came to understand that a successful life requires balance, and most importantly, he accepted responsibility for everything that had happened. Then he stood everything he'd learned about the world on its head. He wanted to see if looking at it differently would make it make sense. He hung upside down from the branch of a tree to reflect on all those early lessons about magic, intuition, bravery, courage. He hung there until he thought he might die. And then he hung some more. He hung until his ego collapsed. He hung until he experienced a great transformation. He was reborn as a man of great wisdom and resilience. He experienced a little death. Then he climbed down from his tree and he went back out into the world. He was now a balanced soul, nurturing, wise, living in peace and harmony. He came to understand the flow of life and how to use it for his own betterment. And he lived in harmony for a long time. Eventually, he became complacent. Slightly bored, he allowed himself little indulgences, which quickly became obsessive desires. He forgot about doing the shadow work which had served him so well. His obsessions turned into demons and enslaved him. He had relaxed his standards. He had let himself fall. Inevitably, his spiritual folly led to physical disaster. He lost the house and all of his material possessions. He fell upon very hard times. He was crushed, nearly defeated. He sat amid the ruins late into the night, wondering what to do. He looked up to the heavens, but he realized that with the old structure gone, he could once again see the stars. He had not seen the stars in a very long time, and he was suddenly overcome with joy and hope. He began to dance in the starlight. Then the moon rose in the eastern sky, and he was once again reminded of all the lies, the chicanery, the deceit, the misperceptions, the broken dreams. He felt the wild power of the mysterious moon, but then he also allowed its calming light to bathe him, to soothe the savage wounds. He realized then that he'd faced a choice, acceptance or madness. So he sat in contemplation until the sun rose, and he was once again filled with joy because the light brings vision and clarity. He was filled with the light of the universe. He remembered his purpose. He came to terms with his past mistakes. He jumped to his feet, a new person. He had heard the call. He set out once again to create a life of meaning and purpose. He marched out into the world, older, wiser, spiritually based. The world was now his oyster. He had come full circle, from a naive little boy to a man in full. And then he had another insight. In a flash, he realized that the world of form is void and that reality is a reflection. What did he do? He placed everything he needed in a small sack, threw it over his shoulder, called to his little doggie, and they set off on a journey. Why did he do such a foolish thing? He wanted to see what this great big new world was all about. Lamont was a seeker, but he was naive. The first thing he did was walk right off a cliff. If you like that story, subscribe to my channel. There's a lot more coming about the tarot.